Okay, welcome to this explainer. Today, we are diving headfirst into literally one of the most audacious, mind-bending espionage operations of the entire 20th century. Seriously, if you think you know how the Cold War was fought, prepare to have your perspective entirely shifted by the sheer, staggering scale of the deception we're going to explore. We're looking at Operation Rubicon, a decades-long secret that, quite frankly, completely redefined global intelligence as we know it.
To really wrap our heads around how massive this operation was, we kind of have to travel back to 1979. Picture this scene. Tehran is in total chaos. Radical students are scaling the walls of the U.S. Embassy, and they meet almost no resistance. They capture 52 American citizens, right? And this drags the U.S. into a massive, grueling international crisis that lasts for 444 days. Now, behind the scenes, U.S. President Jimmy Carter is desperately trying to negotiate with the Iranian militants, and he's using Algeria as a mediator. Naturally, the communications back and forth between Algeria and Iran are heavily encrypted. I mean, no one can listen in. Or, well, at least that's what they believe.
And so this brings up a fascinating question. Because after every single exchange, President Carter knew exactly what the Iranians were saying to each other behind closed doors. He knew every strategy, every reaction. It was all completely laid bare for him. But how is that even possible? How do you just read an unbreakable code? Well, the answer to that actually doesn't lie in Washington or Tehran. It lies in this quiet little town in Switzerland, inside the walls of a supposedly super neutral company called Crypto AG.
The shocking reality hiding behind that corporate neutrality is that Crypto AG wasn't just building the world's most trusted secret-keeping machines. It was an elaborate front, like a total setup. This company was secretly co-owned by the CIA and West Germany's Federal Intelligence Service, the BND. Together, they used this supposedly independent Swiss company to distribute deliberately rigged encryption machines to governments all over the globe.
Okay, so let's look at how this deception actually functioned on a mechanical level. Crypto AG's flagship device was this thing called the CX52 cipher machine. It was designed by a brilliant inventor named Boris Hagelin, and to the naked eye, this thing was a total marvel of security. You'd set the daily machine key, enter your message letter by letter, and then turn this mechanical crank. Inside the box, these incredibly complex key wheels would shift and rotate, transforming your simple plain text into a totally illegible jumble of complex code. It looked, it felt, and it operated exactly like a fortress.
But here is the absolute genius and the trap of the whole thing. The CIA basically demanded that Crypto AG produce two entirely different versions of these machines. If you were a friendly, allied nation approved by the US, you got the secure version, essentially unbreakable encryption. But if you were anyone else, you received a rigged version. Inside these rigged machines, most of the mechanical gears were essentially dead weight. They produced a highly predictable encryption pattern that could be easily intercepted and cracked by the CIA and the BND. So the lock clicked, sure, but it never actually snapped shut.
So you're probably wondering, how did the CIA pull off a total takeover of a private foreign company? Well, it all started back in 1951 with a simple gentleman's handshake deal between the founder, Boris Hagelin, and the CIA. They basically just agreed to restrict who got the good machines. But fast forward to 1970. The founder is getting older, and his son is viewed as kind of unpredictable by the Americans. So to permanently secure their backdoor, the CIA and the BND executed a total, highly classified buyout of the entire company. And they successfully ran the show completely in the shadows all the way until 1993, when the German intelligence agency finally decided it was time to withdraw.
I mean, think about it. What does it actually cost to buy the world's secrets? In 1970, it was a mere $5.75 million. That was the payout given to Hagelin by the intelligence agencies to completely acquire the company. And to keep their hands totally clean and their identities hidden, the CIA and BND routed this payment through an anonymous shell corporation located over in the European microstate of Liechtenstein. It was just a masterclass in financial camouflage.
And this takeover? It built an absolute commercial juggernaut. Once the intelligence agencies were in charge, they effectively became the ultimate invisible marketing department, pushing these compromised machines to governments worldwide. I mean, look at this. In just the first 5 years post-buyout, sales skyrocketed from 15 million Swiss francs to an incredible 51 million. They were literally making a fortune off of deceiving the entire globe.
Now, it's really important to remember that this wasn't just about reading diplomatic gossip. Operation Rubicon actively shaped matters of life and death. Fast forward to April 5, 1986, in West Berlin. Hundreds of people are dancing at the popular La Belle nightclub, which is a venue absolutely packed with American soldiers.
Sometime after midnight, a deadly bomb detonates inside the club. 2 people die instantly, a Turkish woman and an American soldier. And over 100 are wounded, many of them severely. And the aftermath is incredibly fast. Within just days, President Ronald Reagan publicly and aggressively blames Libya and its leader Muammar Gaddafi for ordering the bombing. He even launches retaliatory airstrikes. But wait a second, think about it. How could Reagan possibly know the source of the attack with such absolute certainty so quickly? Well, the answer is that Libya was unknowingly using the weaker, rigged crypto AG machines. The CIA and BND simply read their communications as they happened. Real-time intel. And that's just one example, right? This operation shifted the outcomes of major military conflicts. Take the 1982 Falklands War. You have a small British garrison that gets completely overwhelmed by an invasion from Argentina's military. The 2 nations fight this grueling war for over 70 days. To the public, it just looks like a really difficult, isolated naval conflict at the bottom of the world.
But behind the scenes, the deck is completely stacked. Argentina's using those compromised crypto devices. Every single military radio transmission they make is being intercepted and decrypted by the CIA and BND. This absolutely critical intelligence is then quietly funneled directly to British forces. In one major instance, this intercepted intel played a crucial role in the British submarine attack that sank the Argentine cruiser the Belgrano. That resulted in over 300 deaths. Britain officially won the war, heavily aided by secrets Argentina didn't even know they were broadcasting.
Now, as you can probably guess, having this kind of unparalleled access came with a profoundly dark dilemma. 4 years prior to the Falklands War, in 1978, the world's eyes were all on Argentina for the FIFA World Cup. Meanwhile, literally just kilometers away from those stadiums, the ruthless Argentine military junta was abducting, torturing, and killing dissidents. And through their rigged machines, the BND was intercepting horrific communications. They were literally listening in as the military coordinated flying dissidents out over the Atlantic Ocean and just dropping them to their deaths. And the agonizing truth? They did absolutely nothing. The intelligence agencies simply looked on as bystanders. They faced the ultimate spy's dilemma. If you act on the intelligence to save lives, you completely risk exposing the secret program that gave you the access in the first place. Because they chose to protect Operation Rubicon, the atrocities just continued in silence. It's estimated that 30,000 people became victims of the Argentinian dictatorship. It is an incredibly heavy human cost to maintain a secret.
Of course, a secret this massive with this many moving parts, it just can't stay hidden forever. And the unraveling actually began internally. In 1977, a top crypto engineer named Peter Frutiger figured out the Shah of Iran was being sold rigged machines. The guilt totally aided him until he finally quit and became a whistleblower. But the real explosion happened in 1992. Hans Buehler, who was one of crypto's best salesmen, and by the way, he had absolutely no idea the machines were rigged, was suddenly arrested in Iran. The Iranians suspected foul play, and they interrogated Buehler in a military prison for 9 traumatic, terrifying months. The paranoia was just immense. Finally, the BND had to secretly step in and pay a $1 million ransom just to get him out.
When Buehler got home, deeply traumatized, Crypto AG actually fired him. That's when he went straight to the press. And as the investigative journalist at the Washington Post noted, quote, "There's a real complicated moral dimension to operations like this when it starts affecting people's lives. They're pawns, they're used, they're exploited." Innocent civilian employees were treated as entirely disposable by these powerful intelligence agencies, all just to protect the bottom line of Operation Rubicon.
But the curtain was finally fully pulled back in 2020. This happened through leaked internal CIA documents obtained by the Washington Post and European broadcasters. The documents laid out the whole architecture of the deception, complete with these dramatic Greek mythology code names. Crypto AG was internally called Minerva. The CIA went by EOS, and the BND was Gamma. Seeing it all laid out like this in official black and white documentation finally confirmed decades of rumors and paranoia.
So when we step back, what's the big takeaway here? Well, it's the sheer staggering scale of the vulnerability. Over 100 countries, we're talking NATO allies, South American nations, African states, even the Vatican, bought these machines. For over half a century, the vast majority of the world was basically handing their deepest, most sensitive state secrets directly over to Washington and West Germany, fully, 100% believing they were secure.
Which brings us to a deeply unsettling final thought to wrap up this explainer. If intelligence agencies were able to covertly own the world's premier encryption hardware company for 50 years without getting caught, well, which tech giants, data brokers, or telecommunications companies are they secretly working with today? In our modern era of total digital reliance, whose hardware are we really trusting? Thanks so much for joining me as we walked through the incredible story of Operation Rubicon. Until next time, stay curious and definitely keep questioning.